Andrew DiCecco. You check out his work also at 97.3ESPN.com as well. He joins us every Tuesday and Friday on the Boardwalk Hunt Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. And of course, it's a happy hour Friday as well. Andrew, how you doing today?
Josh, Hunter, what's going on, guys?
Not too much, except for, well, let's be realistic. Football seems to never sleep. And we got to start with the news that's coming out this afternoon about what's going on between the Players Association and what's going on with the players. And it seems to me, Andrew, and this is just my reading of the tea leaves based on all the people on Twitter who are reporting, it seems like the players are looking at the league and saying, hey, guys, where is your game plan for us to get back on the field?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You saw Pat Mahomes, he tweeted something yesterday that it said, you guys had all this time to get this together, and now now it's coming down to the wire here because I believe that the Texans and the Chiefs need to report on, or due to report on Monday. They play that Thursday night game, so there's a lot of scrambling here at the last minute.
I feel like one of the things that stands out to me the most, Andrew, is also the fact that the description by J.C. Treader, I'll read it for the audience again. So here's the breakdown that Treader says it should be the ramp-up period. 21 days of strength and conditioning, 10 days of non-padded practices, and then 14 days of contact acclimation. Now, Treader claims this comes out of medical experts. Now, Jeff Mosher chimed in and said that this would set the Eagles to finish contact practices 3 days before the opener. So I'm going to steal a question from Hunter Brody to ask you here, Andrew, and that is, is that enough time to be ready?
No, I don't think that's enough time, Josh. And what I would do is I would push training camp back 2 weeks to get the things settled, get everything in place. And then I would delay the start of the season for another 2 weeks to make sure you're able to get everything in. It just seems like, I used this analogy last weekend, it seems like they're fumbling the baton here as they're approaching the finish line. Let's, take a step back and really make sure everything's fine-tuned before we move forward.
Do you sense that there might be something similar to baseball that occurs? Maybe not over the finances. Maybe it's more about the COVID-19 protocol. It could maybe be about the finances as well. But do you sense that there will be an intense back and forth between both parties?
I do, Hunter. I think this is far from over, unfortunately, and it's a shame because they had so much time to get things ironed out. You saw yesterday, you and I were talking about this, I think last week, about players potentially looking to opt out, and now they have that option. They have to give the notice by August 1st. And now that's going to become, if they can't get things, squared away, maybe certain players start to think, hey, you know what, maybe I might be better served not even playing this season.
So if they can't come to an agreement, at least in the short term, is there a possibility that the whole season could be pushed back, not because of COVID, but because the players and the league can't come to some sort of agreement?
Yeah, how about that for a monkey wrench? We thought it would be delayed, due to COVID reasons, and that could very well be. But I actually think that you might see something that what you saw with Major League Baseball, where this could be, just the back and forth and unable to come to an agreement, could ultimately force the season to, be behind a couple weeks. And I think that would be the best solution, rather than, make sure you have all the protocols in place and for the safety of the players and coaches and everyone involved. I think that'd be the best, course of action.
So now let's flip it over to the Eagles. With all we just said in consideration, let's assume for right now that the rosters are the same and all that is okay. But let's assume you're starting later. Let's say maybe the Eagles don't arrive at camp on the 28th. Maybe it's August 1st and you're pushing everything back. Who are some of the guys on the Eagles does this impact more than others?
That's a great question. So you're going to look at guys like a Luke Juriga, the guard from Western Michigan, who was one of their more highly touted undrafted free agents, who ordinarily would have a pretty decent opportunity to make the roster given the lack of depth there. Even after the Jason Peters signing, they still have a lot of unproven depth there. But now all of a sudden his reps could shrink, or they're going to shrink, and you don't have that opportunity to kind of really catch the coach's eye. You also look at players like John Hightower and Quez Watkins, two back-end receivers that are far from a sure thing to make the roster. They're kind of going to be, jockeying for that final spot. Their repetitions are going to be compromised there. You have guys like Greg Ward and Marquise Goodwin that are going to eat into their snaps. And then also at the running back position, let's not forget that behind Miles Sanders, you have Boston Scott, and there's a lot of unknown there. There's Corey Clement, who's a familiar name, but there's also two young runners who I particularly like, Elijah Holyfield and Mike Warren. That Mike Warren could end up being one of the guys that gets one of the casualties if they are forced to cut the roster down from 90 to 75 or so. But as it stands right now, those are two guys that really need all the reps that they can get, because there isn't a veteran running back there, and the opportunities are going to be there. The opportunity to seize one of those spots is going to be there.
On InsideTheBirds.com, you and Moshe are going back and forth with 2020 season previews, and you guys talked about the Breakout Award possibly, and you mentioned T.J. Edwards. So how do you think maybe this whole entire situation going down with training camp can impact him specifically?
Yeah, I think T.J. Edwards is another great example of a guy who's positioned to shoulder a more substantial workload on the Eagles in a prominent role as a starter, probably opposite Nate Gary. But as a first-time starter, Hunter, as you know, he's going to need all the reps that he can get. And that's where you might see a guy like a Jatavis Brown really thrive. Granted, he's learning a new system, but he has been in the NFL. He's 26 years old. He's been in the NFL since 2016, I believe. So his veteran presence there could eat into some of T.J. Edwards' snaps, simply because they're going to be scrambling here to get everybody up to speed to get on the field for the season opener. So I think he's a guy that it'll really impact, because he needs all the reps that he can get, and he's working. He's trying to diversify his game, so to speak. He's known as a run defending linebacker. You saw some areas of his game where he showed spurts of being able to drop back in coverage and play that adequately. But you want more weeks to work with him and really refine that to see if he can be a 3-down linebacker.
You guys also went into the defense a bit and talked about the defensive tackle position. Is it the best trio in football?
Yeah, if healthy. That's the key. That's the key there. The Eagles have suffered a rash of injuries over the past few seasons at the defensive tackle position. But as it stands right now, Hunter, that's the best, strongest position, arguably, on the team. You could also make a case for tight end. But when you look at what they all bring to the table, we have Fletcher Cox, who we know what he's done, but he's had to play an uptick in snaps both of the last two seasons due to injuries. And you kind of saw him kind of appear a little gassed at the end of the season because he was playing, because of his increased usage. He didn't have that sidekick playing next to him. Obviously, Tim Jernigan was signed to be that guy, but it didn't quite pan out with his injuries and the back injury and everything. So right now you're getting Javon Hargrave, who has yet to scratch the surface on how good he can be. That was one of the best value signings in the entire free agent class. He's 27 years old. He's going to thrive as a one-gap penetrator under Jim Schwartz. He's going to take away some of those double teams that Fletcher Cox had to endure every week because of the lack of a formidable threat opposite him. And then you have Malik Jackson, who gives you the flexibility to play tackle and kick outside and play and rush from the outside. He's going to step back and play, be the third in the rotation, which is good coming from his skill set, his age, that's a pretty good third tackle to have there. And if they're all, and not to mention, we haven't even gotten in there, Hassan Ridgeway and potentially a guy like an Anthony Rush or a Raekwon Williams who would round out that group. But they're incredibly deep. Now the key is just staying healthy and putting it all together on the field.
Now, you guys both had the same answer for most impactful rookie with Jalen Reagor, and I think we all understand what he can do for this offense. But the question is, can he overcome the obstacles?
Yeah, I was going through the rookies, and it's a no-brainer to take Jalen Reagor because you go through there's just guys that aren't going to have an impact. Davion Taylor is a far cry from being an impactful player on defense. Jalen Hurts isn't really going to become a factor probably until later in the season when he's going to get some snaps. But looking at Jalen Reagor, you look at some of the obstacles he's going to have to overcome. Doug Peterson intimated last month that he was going to be learning the Z position behind Deshaun Jackson. So we all thought, hey, he's a shoe-in to start. He'll slide right in there. Well, no, Doug Peterson would rather have him learn one position, unlike what happened to J.J. Arcega-Whiteside last year under Carson Walsh, where he would go into each week not really knowing what his responsibilities were because he was being thrown in everywhere. So master one position, and then I think he'll step up in season overall, whether it be on the outside or the slot. I spoke to his offensive coordinator from TCU, Sonny Cumbie, for an interview that I did for InsideTheBirds.com, and he was very effusive in his praise of being a quick study and a quick learner, Jalen Reagor. So there's all signs point that, yeah, he'll be able to master that Z position and shouldn't have a problem grasping the other roles and seizing a starting role. Now, the thing that makes Jalen Reagor so interesting is that he's not a guy that is just going to line up on the outside and he needs a requisite amount of targets to be impactful. He's going to be a guy that you can get the ball to, whether it be on jet sweeps, on quick screens to take advantage of his ability to create yards after the catch. Kind of like what Deebo Samuel did as a rookie. I think you're going to see a similar output from Jalen Reagor.
Andrew DiCecco joining us here for Football at 4 here on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at @DiCecco NFL. Of course, InsideTheBirds.com, Inside the Birds podcast, powering Football at 4. Andrew, speaking of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, you led me right into my question, which is, I know everyone's focusing on Reagor, but what could J-Jaw's role be? Because I've seen multiple people on multiple websites point out the fact that this guy was very productive in college. He was among the leaders in the Pac-12 in touchdown receptions. He was a guy who had a very productive 2 years. So he does have the background in being a very good receiver. And I think the expectation is that he can be better in year 2. But what can we really expect from him in year 2?
Well, Josh, right now, assuming Alshon Jeffrey begins the season on the PUP as he works his way back from a Lisfranc injury, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is really the only ex-receiver that the Eagles have. He's really the only guy with size. So he'll be starting, being that he had the second-round pedigree. He's going to be starting one way or the other. I think that, a clean slate this year. He's got a new wide receivers coach. He played last year. The story came out that he was playing through injuries, and really just didn't have a grasp on the playbook. And some of that was in part largely due to Carson Walsh having him had him playing pinballing all over the different positions and never really had a master one. So you take all that into account, and like you said, he was a productive player at Stanford. Is he a burner? No, but he's going to be a competent red zone threat that should be able to I don't want to say thrive, but he should be able to kind of adequately play that Alshon Jeffrey role and be another red zone option along with his tight ends. So I think that's what you're going to see earlier in the season. A healthy J-Jaw using his size and his leaping ability to kind of outmuscle some of these defensive backs and really become a factor in the red zone.
Now, going back to this season preview that you and Moshe did on InsideTheBirds.com, the offense is interesting because Moshe picked the offensive line, which people right now can guess, hey, look, what do you have at left tackle? What do you have at right guard in Jason Peters? You went with running back. So why did you choose running back? And then how do you view the offensive line as a whole right now?
It's a great question. Jeff was surprised when I took running back as well. The reason why I did is because personally, I'm particularly high on Boston Scott. We all know that Miles Sanders is a player that we've spoken about as being having the ceiling of possibly 1,700 yards, all-purpose yards, that is, in his second season. That's a given. But then you look at the backup position, and a lot of folks are, they're a little hesitant to kind of put their stamp on the running back position as being set in stone into the season. But when you look at what Boston Scott did in his 61 carries last year in 11 games, he was a factor in the receiving game and also proved to get those tough yards. He's got outstanding contact balance. He's a really good one-cut runner. I got asked all the time, is he a flash in the pan or is he legit? Boston Scott's a legit running back. He's an NFL running back that's going to have a clear-cut role in the Eagles' offense this year, should see anywhere from 6 to 8 touches, and can really create mismatches with his skill set. And then behind him, take your pick from Corey Clement, Elijah Holyfield, and Mike Warren. I really like, particularly out of that group, I like Holyfield and Warren, but I like Mike Warren in particular because he also has that pass-catching acumen to his game. He had about 3,000 yards combined, all-purpose yards, that is, over his last 2 seasons at Cincinnati. If he goes back to school this year, He's likely viewed as one of the top running backs in college football. So there's a lot of potential there with him. Now it's just, can he do enough in that small window in the summer to really make an impact and create a spot there? But I really like what he can do as a low cost option that can, kind of do that has a unique blend of size and finesse to his game. Now, looking at the offensive line, we talked about being potentially a top 10 line. Yeah, they're maybe a top 8 or top 10 offensive line, but I couldn't put them as the strongest position on offense because there is some uncertainty there. Jason Peters is playing a position he's never played before. Like I said, he always played on the right side. I think it was his second season in the NFL. He played 10 games at right tackle, but playing guard is a completely different beast on the inside. You're handling guys that outweigh the defensive ends that he's used to playing against by 30 pounds. So in some cases more than that, 30 or 40 pounds. And you're playing in a phone booth and, it's all about, power and drive and strength. Now, being 38 years old, Jason Peters has had we all know that he's had his history with injuries. Well, playing on the inside is going to wear on him even more so than it would be on the outside. So it's hard to say. It's easy to say on the surface, yeah, these guys are a future Hall of Famer. He should be able to handle that no problem. Well, that's not necessarily true when you look at transitioning to a completely new position at his advanced age. And then you look at left tackle, there's a lot of question marks with Andre Dillard. You heard he added weight, but did he get stronger? He's pretty strong in the pass blocking game, but what's he like as a run blocker? Can he hold up for a full slate of games? We don't know that. So it's all based on projection. So I couldn't put them up there as the strongest position on offense, given all those uncertainties.
Now, we keep talking about things like what the Eagles' offense, the top 5, top 10, but realistically, Andrew, and I'm really trying to narrow this down because I feel like so many times people argue these things, they're not on the same page. If you had to look around the NFL, how many offensive lines are legitimately better than the Eagles, though?
Jeez. You could probably say 5, 6, like with certainty. And the Eagles have potential to be a top 6 or 8 offensive line, maybe even a top 5. But things have to fall into place, and everything has to. And Jason Peters has to continue to play at a high level, no drop in his play. I know he had an 82.4 overall grading for Pro Football Focus. Take that for what it is. But he's a year older now. We need to make sure that he still is able to kind of maintain that high level of play. And if Andre Dillard can step up and be that first round pick, if they drafted him to be that franchise left tackle, then yeah, absolutely, I could see them being a top 6 or 8 line. But right now, based on projection, I can't give them that label yet, just because there's so many moving parts there.
It's just, and I'm not trying to be mean to anybody, but I feel like when people use these rankings, they kind of flippantly throw them out there. And it's like, guys like you and Mosher and Adam Kaplan, like, this is all you guys do. You're analyzing the Eagles, you're analyzing the league, but, for example, these Madden ratings are coming out, and I just feel like I want to stick my head in water and just drown myself sometimes, because it's like, let's be realistic. How many players in the NFL, like, for example, last year, Jason Peters jumps off sides, but half the league jumps offside. Half the league gets penalties, right? Like, to me, if I look around the NFL at offensive lines, to me, it's like, okay, I know the 49ers are good. The Cowboys, aside from center, are good. But who else is there? Like, the Vikings have been garbage for years. Half the Packers' offensive line can't stay healthy. Have the Lions ever had a healthy offensive line for all 16 games in the last few years? I feel like you go around the league, people don't give the Eagles credit because the fact of, even with Jason Peters playing right guard and Dillard playing left tackle, I think half the league have fans who are screaming, please give me Andre Dillard.
Yes, I agree with you there. The quality of offensive line play around the NFL is not what it used to be. There's a lot of teams that, you're right, they would be happy to have an Andre Dillard or even a Jason Peters. But let's not forget, there's still guys out there that can help a lot of these teams, like a Larry Warford or a Ronald Leary or a player of that mold. But yeah, I mean, the Eagles haven't gotten enough credit for what they've done with the offensive line. Now, I say that, but you need to really see, can Jordan Mailata take that next step in his development? Where's Nate Herbig at in his progression? That all comes together. That's all part of the recipe, so to speak. Whether or not the Eagles have a complete offensive line and guys that can step in, if an injury happens or something like that, can they kind of have a guy that can seamlessly step in there and continue that level of play?
Speaking of Madden ratings, thumbs up or thumbs down? I'm over the Madden ratings.
Thumbs down in a big way, man. I mean, all I had to do was look and see where they had my man Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams was third on that third rated safety on there. Harrison Smith was first. I stopped looking at it after that. They couldn't be further off on that.
Well, Gronk's got a 95 rating. He hasn't played in 2 years. I can't give that any credibility.
No, I don't take you take these ratings with a grain of salt. I've never been one to kind of put a lot of stock in Madden ratings. I don't play video games. I don't get up in arms or anything with that. I don't necessarily even know where they get these ratings from because or where what the criteria is for that. But I never really paid too much mind to it.
Yeah, I think the reactions to it is definitely hilarious. But I'll ask you this: if you had to project how Andre Dillard was going to play this year, do you think that it will be a successful season for him, or do you think that there's going to be more growing pains than we would expect?
You said the word I was going to say. I think there's going to be some early growing pains, Hunter. I think that a lot of people might tend to want to write him off after, maybe let's say he has an inconsistent first 5 weeks. I think you might get a lot of people that are frustrated with that and want to write him off. But I do think that, working with Jeff Stoutland, he has some intriguing intangibles as a player. He was drafted in the first round for a reason. He thrived as a pass blocking tackle at Washington State, and I think that if Jeff Stoutland can tap into some of those intangibles that he has, I think you'll start to see him play. He'll play into the player that he is. Everything's going to come together for him, and towards the end of the season, I think you'll start to see the player that we all envisioned him being when he was selected in 2019.
Andrew, before we let you go, and always appreciate your time here on Football at 4, powered by Inside the Birds podcast. Of course, Andrew DiCecco writes for 97.3 ESPN.com and InsideTheBirds.com. Andrew, obviously the big story from last night and this morning was the whole situation going on with the Washington football team. So I don't want to get into the minutia because anybody who thinks what happened is okay is an imbecile, and they should just go away. But I ask you, some people are bringing up that maybe the NFL needs to do to Daniel Snyder what they did to Jerry Richardson and what the NBA did to Donald Sterling, which is force him to sell the team. Is that, in your opinion, the appropriate punishment?
Yeah, when you look and see all these different issues that the Washington football team has had over the years, much of it leads back to Daniel Snyder. And when you saw, I don't know if you saw his what he put out today, regarding the story that came out from the Washington Post, he almost came off like he had no idea, like he was completely ignorant to it, and made it seem like, okay, well, that happened, but we're going to take a stance here. We're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. We brought Ron Rivera in to kind of reshape the culture here in Washington. I think it might be it's time for a change there in Washington. I think that he should get that Jerry Richardson treatment.
And if that happens, I mean, I'm assuming that if the Panthers sold for, what was it, $2 billion? I mean, the Washington team's got to be worth at least $3 billion then, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
I mean, it's even in a pandemic, the NFL is still making money, and it's amazing. It's incredible in so many crazy ways. He's Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4. Follow him on Twitter at @DiCecco NFL. He joins the Sports Bash every Tuesday and Friday, and as all guests, he joined us here on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline. Andrew, great stuff today. Appreciate it.
You got it, guys. Have an awesome weekend.